Hi everybody, this is Noelle from Petiti Garden Centers, and we're doing a plant spotlight on bonsai. Now, I'm going to tell you this is not an in-depth, intermediate to advanced bonsai lesson. This is just basic information, how to be successful with your bonsai. Okay, so let's start out with bonsai. In general, it actually translates to tray planting, okay, or potted planting. So again, yeah, all these plants have been potted up, but here's the key, that it's this ancient art form, this ancient Asian art form where they planted these plants in shallow pots, sort of confining the root system to make these plants stay kind of miniature or very slow growing. That's kind of the key here. And then through pruning and training them in different ways, you end up kind of developing a miniature tree, if you will. So that's kind of the whole key here. Bonsai is pretty important in Asian culture. It does bring on different aspects of Zen and Feng Shui, where you're gonna find that it represents the wood element and it connects us to nature. So you'll see that bonsai kind of represents growth and kindness and abundance and so forth. So all good things with bonsai. I will say, if you're interested in Feng Shui, they do suggest that you place it in the eastern, southern, or southeastern parts of your home. So keep that in mind when you bring it home, but it's also a great gift plant, really symbolizing wealth and luck and harmony. So it's a nice giftable type plant, if you will. To start out with bonsai care, it's not like how we've been talking about some of our other plant material, because there are so many different plants that are used in bonsai that it's really, the care kind of depends on that type of plant. But there's usually 3 different types of bonsai categories, if you will. The first one is an exotic or a houseplant type bonsai. So things like Pachira here, this is what we call the money tree. Sometimes it's called a chestnut plant. You'll see these often as bonsai and pruned to kind of take on more of that tree form. So this is a houseplant type, or you might see something like the ZZ plant here. So ZZ, just a little bit more confined. They're very, very slow growers, very easy growers. So this is nice as kind of a starter bonsai as well. Or you might see something like the ficus family, this beautiful ginseng ficus, where it's kind of got this cool exposed root and stem here, and beautiful foliage. So all 3 of these are gonna be in that exotic houseplant category. So again, with the houseplant category, what you're looking for as temperatures, growing them year-round indoors, about 60 to 80 degrees inside. Typically, your light through the windows, all of them can take bright indirect light. I wouldn't put direct sunlight on any of these. So northern exposure window, great. If you have an eastern, western, or southern exposure, bring them back away from the window about 5 foot or so they're not getting any direct sunlight on their foliage, which could eventually burn. Just so we know, the ZZ is a low light plant, so you could grow this bonsai in much lower light conditions. The ficus and the Pachira, they actually would like to be in sort of a medium to bright indirect light, so give them a little bit more lighting. As far as the houseplant goes, you just need to know the light, and you also need to know that it's important to keep the humidity up around them indoors. That's always great for most of your houseplants, your foliage houseplants. They just appreciate higher humidity levels, I should say. Now, the second category, which I don't have here today, but it's usually like a subtropical flowering plant. So things like gardenias get trained into bonsais, things like azaleas get trained into bonsais, but here's the thing, they are very, very difficult for a novice gardener, for a beginner. If you were gonna start and give this as a gift, I would start with the houseplant types. I would say that those flowering tropicals are almost like an advanced bonsai type. So I don't have any of those at this time. But we do have hardy types. And I think that the hardy types like this juniper in front are really a good gift for a good houseplant grower has a green thumb and might want to advance into more of a, let's say, just a medium green thumb grower, okay? So they can definitely handle the juniper. What's interesting about the junipers is they are cold hardy in our area. So they can take temperatures really down to freezing and a little bit below freezing. So they actually want to be grown outdoors or in an outdoor-like condition for most of the year, really only requiring some winter protection just over our winter months in Northeast Ohio. So that's kind of fun. What's interesting about them again is that they're woody evergreen plants. So cool temperatures, let's say 32 degrees to 60 degrees, are about right for them. And also they can take some direct sunlight. So you can really put the junipers out into full sun conditions. Just keep in mind that they might dry out very, very quickly. So again, bright indirect light, partial shading, that's actually a good aspect for everybody. So your maintenance is not as difficult, especially with watering, okay? Now, so we talked about the three types. Now let's talk about watering, because watering is really the key with bonsai. In order to keep your bonsai healthy and continue growing for yourself, you always want to make sure that the roots and the soil substrate have moisture. Now, whenever we water a plant, and it's the same thing with bonsai, you want to make sure that you're thoroughly moistening the soil substrate, making sure that everything gets wet and then drains away from the pot. Most of the time, bonsai pots will have fairly large drainage holes in the bottom. Some of these don't, so you want to be careful with your watering. But the drainage is key, and also that thorough moistening of the soil. You do that twice, and you let the water drain away. It could drain away into a saucer with pebbles, that's fine. It can just drain away in your kitchen sink if you prefer to water them at the kitchen sink. So again, just making sure that water drains away. Then every day you are checking the soil moisture. So again, this is a good gift for somebody that likes to water their plants. That is kind of a, if you will, an overwaterer. That's good, okay, with bonsai. So again, checking that soil substrate every day, making sure that you feel moisture. When you don't feel moisture and the top of the soil is dry or flaky, guess what? It's time to thoroughly water again. So again, watering maintenance on these plants is very, very important, and it could be a daily to every other day type function, okay? In the winter time, obviously plant processes and their growth have slowed or they're semi-dormant, especially if you keep them at cooler temperatures in the home or in the office. So you wouldn't have to water as often as you would during the growing season, but you still need to check daily. So keep that in mind. Okay, watering is very important. Fertilizer, I'm gonna say that feeding these plants, again, you could use a multi-purpose, plant fertilizer, houseplant fertilizer, that's fine. But again, I would dilute the strength of that and only use it during the growing season months. So April through September about, that's really when they're going to use it. And at a diluted strength, you're not making this plant push a lot of new growth and so forth. So that's something key with these as well. Another thing with bonsai, of course, that's pretty key is the pruning of these plants. So the whole idea is to create just a beautiful miniature tree growth. So when do you prune these plants? Typically during dormant season. So again, if it's a non-flowering type, you'd want to prune these. Typically we say late winter, early spring. You can go in, clip and cut as you need to make the shape and the structure that you prefer, okay? There's no right or wrong way. Now, as far as root pruning, if you want to keep your bonsai slow growing and keep them in the same container, you would do root pruning in the spring months, okay? So in the spring, when they just start to actively grow or push out new growth, that's when you're gonna go in and take some clear shears and go ahead and root prune around the plant and make it stay in that container and make it just grow slower for you, okay? So pruning is typically late winter or early spring after it's activated. If you happen to have a bonsai that's a spring flowering type like an azalea, wait to prune after it's done blooming. Same rule applies for all of our spring bloomers out in the landscape. You wait to prune until after the flowering cycle is over. Okay, I think we've got most of our success points going. Just remember keeping your bonsai out of hot drafts, especially because it'll dry up the soil very, very quickly, dry the foliage out very quickly. Cold drafts you want to avoid with more of your exotic or houseplant types, so do keep that in mind. And other than that, just pay attention to your watering. Enjoy.